Hi, I'm Jason. In this video we're going to take you through the show me tell me questions that you could be asked on your UK driving test so that you can feel confident and fully prepared. The examiner will ask you one tell me question where you'd explain how you'd carry out a safety task at the start of your test before you start driving, and one show me question where you'd show how you'd carry out a safety task while you're driving. You'll get one driving fault, sometimes called a minor, if you get one or both questions wrong. You'll fail your driving test if your driving is dangerous or potentially dangerous while you answer the show me question. Now let's get started with the tell me questions. Tell me how you would check that the brakes are working before starting a journey. Tell your examiner that your brakes should not feel spongy or slack. Brakes should be tested as you set off, and your vehicle should not pull to one side. Tell me where you would find the information for the recommended tyre pressures for this car and how tyre pressures should be checked. Tell your examiner that you would find the information in the manufacturer's guide or on the inside of the driver's side door, and that you'd use a reliable pressure gauge to check the tyres. Tell me how you would make sure your head restraint is correctly adjusted so it provides the best protection in the event of a crash. The head restraint should be adjusted so that the rigid part of the head restraint is at least as high as the eye or top of the ears and as close to the back of the head as is comfortable. Tell me how you check the tyres to ensure that they have sufficient tread depth and that their general condition is safe to use on the road. Tell your examiner that there should be no cuts or bulges and that the tread depth should be at least 1.6 millimeters. Tell me how you check that the headlights and tail lights are working. You do not need to exit the vehicle. Explain to your examiner that you would turn the switch to the dipped headlights and then walk around the vehicle to check the lights are working correctly. As this is a tell me question, you do not need to physically check the lights, but I thought I'd show you anyway. Tell me how you would know if there was a problem with your anti-lock braking system, ABS for short. When you switch the ignition on, the ABS light should illuminate for a few seconds and then go out. If it stays on, then you'll probably have a fault with the ABS system. Tell me how you check the direction indicators are working. You do not need to exit the vehicle. Tell your examiner that you'd operate the hazard warning switch and then you'd walk around the vehicle and check that all 6 indicators are working correctly. As this is a tell me question, you do not need to physically check the lights, but again, I thought I'd show you anyway. Tell me how you'd check the brake lights are working on this car. Tell your examiner that you'd operate the brake pedal and then make use of reflections in windows or doors, or just simply ask someone to help. Tell me how you'd check the power assisted steering is working before starting a journey. Tell your examiner that you'd start the car and make slight turns with the steering wheel. Alternatively, you could test the steering as you set off, and the steering shouldn't feel heavy. Tell me how you'd switch on the rear fog light and explain when you'd use it. You do not need to exit the vehicle. Tell your examiner that you would put on your fog lights and the symbol should appear on the dashboard, and that you'd use it when visibility is reduced to less than 100 metres. Once again, you don't need to exit the vehicle, but I thought I'd show you anyway. Tell me how you'd switch your headlights from dipped to main beam and explain how you'd know the main beam is on. Firstly, put the ignition on. Then put the dipped headlights on. And then on the left stalk, you'll see this symbol, and then push it forward. Then tell your examiner that a blue light should appear on the dashboard. The next 3 tell me questions will be carried out under the bonnet. So let's show you how to open the bonnet on this car. Walk around to the passenger side. Open the passenger side door. Pull the bonnet release catch. Then walk around to the front of the car. Just to the left of centre is this yellow lever. Push this to the right and lift the bonnet at the same time. Grab the yellow hold bar and then place it in this hole to secure the bonnet. Open the bonnet and tell me how you'd check that the engine has sufficient oil. Tell your examiner that you'd pull the dipstick out and then wipe it with a cloth. Then put the dipstick back in. Leave it a few seconds and then pull the dipstick back out again. And just check between the minimum and maximum markers of the oil level. Then replace the dipstick. As this is a tell me question, you do not need to physically carry out this task, but just tell the examiner what you'd do. Open the bonnet and tell me how you'd check that the engine has sufficient engine coolant. Show your examiner that this is the engine coolant and you check the level is between the minimum and max. If the level is low, make sure you top up when the engine is cold. Open the bonnet and tell me how you check that you have a safe level of hydraulic brake fluid. Show the examiner that this is the hydraulic brake fluid and that you check the level is between the minimum and maximum markers. Now we'll show you how to close the bonnet. Get the yellow hold, pull it out of the little hole, bring it down to your right into this little yellow catch, click it into place, bring the bonnet down to about this height and then let go. Now that concludes all 14 tell me questions. Now we'll move on to the show me questions. Now let's get started. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you would wash and clean the rear windscreen? Here's where you'll find it on this left stalk. Here's the symbol. Twist it down, hold it for a few seconds, and the wiper will automatically wipe. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you'd wash and clean the front windscreen? It's here on the left stalk again. Here's the symbol. Press it in for a couple of seconds, and then the wipers will automatically wipe. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you'd switch on your dipped headlights? Turn the switch to dipped headlights. Then check on the dashboard for this green light. If your lights aren't needed, then switch it back to automatic. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you'd set the rear demister? Here's the rear demister symbol. Press it once and the light will come on, and press it again if it's not needed. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you'd operate the horn? When there's no one around, press the centre of the steering wheel. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you demist the front windscreen? Firstly, turn up the blowers. Then, direct the airflow to the front windscreen. Then, turn the heater up. Try to maintain concentration on the road whilst you carry out this task. If the windscreen didn't need demisting, then revert back to the original settings. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you'd open and close the side window? Locate the window control, then push down on the button. If you double push the button, the window will come down automatically. If you double click the button up, then the window will come up automatically. So that's everything that you need to know about the show me tell me questions. If you get these right, then you're already off to a great start on your driving test. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and check out my other videos that might just help you pass. So all the best with the test, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.